With me today is Brett Lillie, and he is a coach, speaker, chiropractor, and author of Athlete Within, a practical 10-step process to get you moving and keep you moving for the rest of your life. And that's what we're going to chat about today. So, welcome, Brett.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. And it's so great to have you on, as this is something that I absolutely 100% believe in.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So, can I ask you, what was the catalyst for writing your book? Was it the fact that so many people are avoiding exercise because they're busy, or was it something else?
It was a couple of things. It really began obviously working in a clinic. I was very chronic pain orientated, so which meant, a lot of intense time with people.
Yeah.
So that kind of really started to look into a lot more about how, people live their lives through their stories.
Mm.
People came in with pain and complaints, but it really started to, the ones that were really successful were the ones that you kind of tap into their story of their world. And that's what changes them and gets them through and become successful. So I
Yeah.
kind of really got interested in this, but had few of my own experiences in life. Opening a couple of those middle-age doors of divorce. That was a big one,
Mm.
painful. But then I opened another door called cancer.
Oh,
And cancer was really what changed my world and changed a lot of things for me. So in a sense, I knew a lot of things, but I wasn't really doing them. And cancer really pulled me up, especially when you have a surgeon give you timelines and tell you, this is how long you're going to live and things like that as well, which was quite scary. That's a big story. But
mm.
it really made me stop and go in. And that's kind of really where it became a lot more insightful and starting a lot more, asking those questions we all ask, but really asking them like, why? Like, why? What's the meaning behind this? Why do I want this?
Yeah.
And so that kind of pulled out a lot of different things. And I was speaking at one point, and a person called Andrew Griffith was in the audience. And he came up to me afterwards and congratulated me on the presentation, but also said, you ever thought about writing? You've got a book inside of you. And I was laughed. Didn't really think much of it. But a couple of months later, I was at a conference with a person called Professor Stuart McGill, who's a back pain specialist and performance expert, a leading world expert. And he was in Australia doing his final presentation. He's retiring at the age of 78. And he's always been a big role model for me through my career. And during a lunchtime, had a bit of one-on-one with him. And he turned and said to me that he's fitter and stronger at the age of 78 than when he was 50 years old. And
Oh,
it really knocked me up. Like, how could you be at 80? And he's had hip surgery and injuries through his career. How could you be fitter and stronger at 80 than when you were 50? And that really, on top of the cancer, where I was already in that sort of thought process,
mm.
it really triggered something inside of me and just went, I've never really thought down the track. I'm
Mm.
always thinking about now where I'm at, what's happened in your past. And, as clinicians, that's what we tend to do. What sort of injuries you've had in the past and where are you now? And let's work on that. But to really project forward was a big thing for me. And it really shook me. It's like, what really changes and makes things happen in 30 years' time? Because at that time, too, I was on the cusp of turning 50, one of those birthdays with a zero on the end of it. So it really pushed me. And that's kind of really where I went back and rang Andrew and said, I want to take you up on that. So I came to Andrew wanting to write a book on performance. I was all about performance. It would have been very academic. And Andrew just laughed and said, it's not you. And we talked about it. We worked on it for many months until we kind of got to this idea of like, it's really got to be a process book of how can people start and get through to find it themselves. And that's really where it was the part of rediscovering your own athlete within. And so
Mm.
that's really where the title of the book really grew from. And then the rest of it just kind of came out.
Yeah, right. Oh, wow. There's so much in that. So, first of all, I'm really sorry to hear about your journey with cancer, and there's nothing like that to really help you look through life through a different lens. Because I've been going through that myself. So I share
Ah,
that with you. And yes, there's lots of life events that have happened for you in terms of the big 50 and going through that journey and then deciding that you have got a book within you to get it out there to the world, which I know
mm,
also going just finishing that process, it's big and it makes you dig really deep and sharing a lot of you within that.
absolutely. I mean, you're writing a book is almost a self-development program in its own. You question everything you're writing, like who's going to read this? Is it worth it? But you really come out the other end having really condensed and consolidated those ideas that you started with. I think we're going to go from the AM to the PM of our lives. In the early years of our life, we in our 20s, it's very external, trying to go through those achievements, successes,
Mm,
buying a house, getting married, cars, and accumulating things. But we kind of all go through a step, not so much a midlife crisis, but it's kind of a passage where we start to wake up somewhere along the line.
mm,
So for some of it's a bit of a slow awakening of realization, but for most of it's really a jolt. you know,
yeah.
Something hits us and hits our threshold and says, enough. I'm putting a line in the sand,
Mm,
or you could be brave enough to take that. But for me, it took divorce, cancer, and what's the third one they always talk about is financial hardship. They're the
yeah.
big ones which shake, our being, our identity.
Yeah.
So, I was going through a divorce, trying to sort that out, highly stressed. It was my entire focus was trying to work out how to get through this. And, it's a stressful time period. It's a lot of
Mm,
arguments, a lot of insecurities come up. But, in the midst of a lot of that, I think I've been probably a year and a half through that. A couple of days before Christmas, I woke up probably 2 o'clock in the morning and didn't feel right. And I'd already been checking out a couple of things, have done some tests over the last 6, 8 months. Nothing had really come up. But at this point, as a clinician, I knew
mm,
something's not right in my belly and took myself to hospital. And some blood tests showed my iron was terribly, terribly low. They couldn't work out how I'd literally walked into the hospital. And then a couple of days before Christmas, there's not a lot of staff on. So, I had a colonoscopy done at 11 o'clock at night, an MRI done at 1 a.m. in the morning. And then, a day or two later, I'm faced with a surgeon, and he's pointing at this big MRI, saying, your whole belly is lit up like a Christmas tree, and talking about colon cancer. It's here, it's here. And he basically gave me, that sentence of, you've got probably 3 months, and we're going to be doing surgery straight away. Have you got any questions? And it's a great surgeon, really very specific, and he's seen, with all of the experience that he's had, when he sees these MRIs and these sort of tests lining up, to him that's a duck. So for me,
mm,
that was a big decision of really diving back into my understanding of health, as a chiropractor and student of health over the many years, over 2 decades. Um, I kind of really went deep and asked myself all these questions, and is this it? And I
mm,
really spent some time. When you're in hospital lying on your back, you can't go very far. There's only a certain number of visits now, so you get a lot of time on your own. And I chewed up a lot of that time deep. I think I was
mm,
just yoga, meditation, got inside deep. Decided I wasn't eating a lot of food, etc. And I just went in and asked all these questions, like, thinking about my kids. That was a massive tug on me, thinking about
mm,
why, what's my life really been about for me. And but the biggest one for me too was, the kids, and also, have I done everything that I want to do here? Am I finished yet? Am I ready to kind of close that curtain? And it was a big no. It was a big no. So I listened to the surgeon, took his advice, went through with the surgery, but I took a lot of other things just on my own self, on my own back, and put those things into practice. So
Mm.
part of that learning is a big part of what that book is, because there are certain times in our life we have transitions, but there's certain times in our life where we just need to step up and we have to make that change.
Yeah.
And there's conditions. We live in these big conditions. We create this story, which we live our life through this story. We've got to break out of that story, pull those masks aside, deal with those shadows, and have those real conversations with yourself. It starts within, but you've then got to get past that, because who's the hardest person on ourselves is usually we're the hardest person on ourselves. We're so
Mm.
critical of ourselves. If we're doing the right thing, if we did the right thing, if that person was this, that. So there's a big part of that side of things, and how I operate, how I was living my life, that I really wanted to change. But also the conditions, the beliefs that I should be doing things this way, it should be done that way. And for me, pulling myself out of those conditions was hard. I was,
Mm.
I had some really strong bedrock, which I believed in, which I had to really jackhammer and crack
Yeah.
to be able to kind of move forward from as well. And then, for me, it was really, well, where am I going with this? Here's my blueprint. Here's what I want to change, but where is this really going to take me there? And that was my pull. And how do I keep associating and engaging with that so I don't lose it? How does that stick to my truth, my essence inside? So, we're having a very deep conversation very quickly about a lot of what this book was really about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But you're so right. And, congratulations to you for, really busting some limiting beliefs there. It's something I find quite challenging when the medical fraternity will tell you something like, oh, you've got 3 months. There's nothing like that for someone who is driven to go, you are wrong. And, really, and because I really believe that mindset is a key part of, helping you and fueling you to get better. And, I suppose, yeah, and as you say, to live your best life.
Mm-hmm. Live the best version of you. Yeah, I mean, you've got to really understand. I mean, a doctor is really specialized in one area, and they are giving you their opinion. Sorry, and
Yeah.
that's what they believe in. That's kind of really what they're going to sign their name on as well. And that's one piece of evidence. That's one piece of information, and in a sense,
Mm,
that's kind of like a role model.
mm,
But then you start looking at other role models. Who's
mm.
been past this before? Who's changed things before?
Yeah.
I want to go meet some of those people. I want to go. It's like you with your podcast. You get into even one of your recent ones about courage went really deep. Who else can I start going to talk to and find valid opinions as well?
Mm.
And you start to work within and finding what your version of it is, and that's life.
Yeah.
That's life in many ways. So,
Mm.
and then you've got to really decide on what your mindset is. So, in the
Yeah.
book, I have a big chunk on mindset. I guess probably because I've spent so much time really working on my own, that
Mm,
I really, for me, that's a detailed conversation. And
mm.
mindset is integral into also how we embody it as well. It's not just
Yes.
here in our head, but we've also got to embody it in our physiology, the way we move. And, that became another sort of link to rediscovering your athlete within, is understanding how that all comes together.
Yeah. So I love that. And I love that phrase athlete within. So do you believe that we all have an athlete within?
Absolutely, yes. You go back to being a kid. You show me the one kid that was sitting there you know, at a birthday party, just sitting there, just watching everyone.
Mm,
Every kid, as a kid, we get taught, not taught, we're moving. That's how we understand the world. It's how we explore the world. It's our curiosity. We're adventurous, we're imaginative. So,
mm.
we were doing a workshop just recently, and I had, one of the participants said, I've never really been an athlete. But, it
Yeah.
didn't take very long to kind of get down to, she remembered, doing 18 backflips at one of her family holidays in a row to beat her brothers. And she was laughing her head off, saying, you know what? I was actually really gymnastic, but I never really did gymnastics. But I really loved playing and with my brothers, and all this story comes out. And so rediscovering is there is a story, and so we're tapping into what that story is, and they're the moments of your greatness. That's really where your mindset and your body were linked together, and you were embodying it and living it. And
Yeah.
so there's patterns. There's a pattern. We can start to find those moments as you started to grow up. They were there. Like, as a teenager, even as an adult, going to a party and dancing. You're on the dance floor and you were like king. You were it. Living the moment. It didn't matter what anyone thought. And,
Totally.
absolutely. And so, that's what we want to find out more about. That's where the clues are.
Yeah.
And so really rediscovering your athlete within is, not this definition of an athlete who's elite, an Olympic or on the TV like Federer. But it's redefining, and what's your definition? We all have different bodies.
Yep.
Some of us are big and strong like bears, whereas I'm a little bit more like an antelope. I love running. I love bouncing, kicking balls. So we're
Mm.
all built differently, and we think differently when we play sport. So
Yes.
it's
Yes, I totally agree with that. I think it's a real mental health thing for me too. I need to move every day because if I don't, I can go down into, the
yeah,
dark
yeah.
side of things. And I don't want to do that. So I know it fuels my mindset and it makes me feel so much better. But one thing I also picked up in what I was reading about you is it helps people to be more present, which I feel leaders, want more of today. So, how does it make you be more present in the moment?
Well, an easy answer to that is you can look at it from an evolutionary point of view. We developed this upright ability in a brain that was massive and could really start to think. So it's through evolution, we've really learned how to think on our feet.
Mm,
We didn't sit down and start to think, okay, how am I going to get this mammoth? How are we going to start to forage and collect? We were doing all of this on our feet.
mm,
It's only really through the industrial, moving to farming, then we moved into industrial, and then into sort of this factory lifestyle that we start to really put down time. You start time, you finish time, you have break times, we have alarm clocks. This is really when the world started to change a lot.
mm,
But movement for your brain is there's two ways. Movement is learning. It's how we learn, and input comes in through the environment moving. We sense and we can see the environment's changing. So we have these maps of how the world is. So, you open up your door, you expect everything to be in its place. But then also the other way we get information is how our body is moving through those environments.
mm-hmm.
So the more if you're sitting and static, your brain is kind of like, and we get stuck in thought. But we've all had that kind of thing where I don't know where this is going. We get up, we start to walk to the toilet. And so when you get around the corner, it's like, boom, oh, that's the answer. And you run back to your computer. It's like, oh, I've got it. And,
Yeah.
you had to get up to move to kind of break that trance so you could come
Mm,
back to it. So, in a sense, that's thinking on your feet. One of my favorite stories about that, I know you looking at time and things, but is Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin had this whole idea of evolution, trying to put all these big pieces together, living in London. But to kind of really put it together, to map it out, he moved the whole family down south to Kent. And he had this 2 to 3 kilometer walking track around his house through the garden. So every day he would 2 or 3 times go out and just walk around the track. And all he's doing is thinking. You go back through Nobel Prize winners and great inventors of 100 years ago, they all walked, they all moved, they had their dinner, and then they went for a stroll. That's where they came up with their best ideas. So creativity, productivity is such a big thing in today's workforce.
yeah.
And that's another element which we've been moving in, is teaching people how to move and to integrate more movement into our day, which is exactly
Yes.
what you were talking about, keeping your mindset.
Yeah. I know when I move away, when I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't know, what am I going to write? I don't know what to say. Uh, or even on social posts, I don't know what I'm going to say. But if I go for a walk, it's like, oh, you could say this, or you see something, and it's like it triggers, oh, I could talk about
Love
that.
it.
I could talk
Love
about
it.
that. So it's, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I can't run anymore, but I always look for things that I can do, which is walking, get to the gym. There's always something that you can do. So, yes, I love that. And you share 10 practical ways that people can increase their movement. Are you able to give us this little sneak peek of a couple?
We kind of go through a process. So it's like 10 steps where you start from, where you are now, the world you're in, your reality.
Yep.
And as you kind of go through the 10 steps, you're really setting yourself up to win.
Mm.
So you're kind of going through it. But, the 10 steps is too much to go through just at the moment. But
Yeah.
in a sense, you can kind of break them down into step one is understanding where you're at, who you are, what your why is. And that's the rediscovering step. And that's really what we go through when we coach people, when we do workshops. And also when I speak, that's kind of really where we have a lot of fun up on live audiences as well.
Yeah.
But the second step is transforming. And, in a sense, there's a lot of information out there about this, taking your why further, goal setting and putting parameters in, putting boundaries in, and kind of knowing your place in the world. Mindset is part of transforming. There's a lot of information out there, um, which I just love, but that's an important step.
Mm.
And then the third step is who you become.
Yeah.
And becoming is a big part of it. That's kind of really why we start to look at, what's your PM years, your golden years, what's longevity mean to you?
Mm.
And, that was me, the story we were talking about right at the beginning with Professor
Mm.
Stuart McGill. Like when he's 80, that's like 30 years ahead of where I was at that time. And it was big thinking for me as well. But,
Mm.
my favorite three, if you really broke it down, is the rediscovering. I love taking people through the rediscovery process. The stuff that comes
Yeah.
up
That'd be great.
is, it's funny, but it's also tear jerking. Like it goes
Mm.
deep, and people really start to remember a lot of things they used to love enjoying as a kid.
Mm.
For me, why? And my cancer was a big part of that. Pulled and tore me around on that. Why do we do things? What drives? But really good. What's meaning? And life is meaning. You know, are you living a well-lived life? Is this the best version? The only way you can answer that is going into your why.
Mm.
And then my third and favorite one is, what's your promise? It kind of, came from goal setting and a little bit of Jim Rohn was something in there, somewhere in my deep dark past. But what's your promise to the world? What are you putting out there, and are you going to stick to it? Don't make
Yes.
a promise. It's got to be bigger than where you are at the moment. And the promise is your challenge, but it's your challenge to you that you're giving the world.
Yes. I love that. Commit to it. That's such a great note to finish on, Brett. Thank you so much. And I'll be sharing all of the links to get in touch with you via our show notes. So thank you for being part of Leading You and for so generously sharing your story with us today.
And just to finish, it's been 9 years since that cancer diagnosis.
Oh, amazing.
Yep. Thank you
See?
very much for having me, Julie.
Yes, I love that. Thank you, Brett.